What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and Twitter and answer them here on this show in video format. And the first question is from C. Zachary Chad, who says, do you think the Browns' offensive line will struggle next week? Chase Young is looking like a young stud. Now, this is an interesting question, right? Because the Browns actually held up pretty well offensively from the line standpoint against Baltimore, and I think that's one of the better lines you're going to see. Also, they held up pretty good against a weak interior because of injury, Cincinnati Bengals defensive line, but a pretty strong edge rush Carlos Dunlap has there. So the Browns have stood up to some good edge rushers at this point, and I think Jedrick Wills, what he does the best, honestly, is pass block. Run block, he still makes some mistakes. Specifically on the goal line, he's made a couple mistakes that actually cost the Browns on that one drive. He was one of the reasons why the Browns couldn't score on the 1 yard line. But as far as pass rushers go, he should be fine. Hopefully you get back Jack Conklin. If you do that, you're going to have some decent success. You got the tight ends there if you need to put a chip block on him. The one thing I think the Browns will be able to do against Washington is run the ball specifically at Chase Young, because, you know, young pass rushers tend to just not be great at stopping the run. They tend to be over eager for the sack. So I think you can fool them on some play action and do some things in that area. So I would look for the Browns to do that. And I think the offensive line will hold up well against Washington's front. And I think if they do that, they actually stand a really good chance in winning that game. Next question comes from RL Thunderstruck, who says, hey, Quincy, we saw orange pants on Thursday against the Bengals. Do you think we could see more uniform combinations in the future? If so, which ones? I know the NFL puts a limit on how many uniform combinations you can try out there. I don't know what that limit is. I believe it's 5 different kits. So it seems like the Browns might not be wearing their color rush this season, and they're going to go with the orange pants instead of that. Or maybe they'll have the brown on white normal that they wore against the Baltimore Ravens, the white tops, brown pants that they are going to wear on the road. And then they have that home, alternate with the orange pants. Then they might do a white with the orange pants or a white with the brown pants. I hope they make the orange pants the regular pants, because that looks really good, honestly. I miss the white pants, but that can be an alternate. I really like the orange pants. I would also like to throw out a combination I don't think we've seen enough, and that is the orange jersey with the brown pants. I think that actually looked really good. So, yeah, those are the combinations I would like to see. But it was nice to see the orange pants back on Thursday, and it was nice to see it win in those orange pants. The next question comes from the Yeti, who says, hey, Quincy, what do you think we'll end up paying Baker with how he's played? I don't really feel like he's worth 30, 35 million, because we'll lose a ton of talent, and Baker would have to carry, which I don't think he can. At this point in his career, he can't carry that amount of a cap penalty or that amount of talent. He's not there yet in his development. He could get there. We'll see. We'll see where he's at the end of the season. With Baker Mayfield, yeah, I think you're about right. I think 25 to 35 million is his range. Pretty reasonable for a quarterback who could start in the league and be a top 15 guy. If he proves he can be a top 15 guy, sure. With the cap, look, the Browns are pretty locked in at this point. They already got Miles down. They already got a couple other guys down. So you can afford to overpay Baker Mayfield a little bit and keep your core. You would just have to rebuild around him and kind of take that bet that he's going to develop into somebody. It's going to be the Ben Roethlisberger bet, right? Ben Roethlisberger got his extension before he was really Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. And then over the course of that career, over the course of that contract, he became the Ben Roethlisberger who can kind of elevate guys. That would be the same bet you're making with a long-term deal with Baker Mayfield. So yeah, fair value would probably be around 20, 25 million. I don't know if a quarterback will ever agree to that amount of money, but maybe if you can do that, that would be great, because I think that's probably what Baker Mayfield's worth at this point in his career. Down the line, we'll see. This next question comes from Adam, who says, hey, Quincy, do you see the defensive problems continuing with Greedy and Mack back in there? I just don't see how 2 decent quality starters are going to help with what's going on at the minute. I'm going to caution Browns fans, because I have this sneaking suspicion that Greedy Williams and Mack Wilson are going to come back, and then people are going to say, oh, that fixed the defense, right? Because it might be like a correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation thing. Because the problem with the Browns defense is not personnel at the moment. The personnel hasn't been bad, and their limitations aren't what's causing this team problems. It's the execution. And again, I've said this plenty of times. The number one secondary did not get enough reps with each other because of injuries during training camp, and that is really showing itself to be a big problem throughout the early parts of the season. Now, Greedy can come back over this week. Mack Wilson might even come back for week 3 against Washington. But I also think what's the most important thing is that you have the long week when it comes to practice. And that's going to do more for this Browns secondary than any returning player is going to do for this defense. So that might be the problem. The one thing I will disagree with is I think Mack Wilson does help you out tremendously when it comes to covering tight ends and being more athletic and versatile in your pass coverage because he's more athletic. He's a much more of a playmaker. There were a couple plays where B.J. Goodson was where he was supposed to be, but I thought Mack Wilson might have made a better play if he was in that spot. So, yeah, I don't think Greedy and Mack Wilson will solve the defensive problems, but I think this long weekend that they have, this extra time that they have to gel, and more time that they get reps with each other, that will fix this defense. Again, I don't think it's a personnel issue. I think it's more of an execution issue, and those issues are fixable. That being said, don't oversell what I'm saying here. I'm not saying the Browns are going to be a top 10 defense this year once they get everything together. They will, at best, be a top 15 defense, like 15th ranked defense at best. I don't think they have the personnel to be much better than that, but that's fine. If you're 15th in the NFL as far as defenses go, you can win a lot of games with that. But that's where I think the Browns' defensive problems lay. The next question comes from that Browns fan who says, should the Browns trade for a big-name player on the defense? Absolutely not. There's not going to be a big-name player who's going to come in and fix the problems on this defense. The defensive line has been getting a ton of pressures. The issue is the secondary. And the secondary's issue is not its personnel. You have decent personnel there. Terrence Mitchell played pretty well. Denzel Ward played pretty well. You have decent enough safeties. The problem is the execution, specifically when this team is running a lot of zone. If you look at where Joe Burrow was able to kind of slice and dice the Browns, it was when they were in zone. It was when, one of the top receivers weren't manned up by Denzel or, Terrence Mitchell. If you go out and trade for somebody big name to change up this defense, you're going to do more harm than I think you would do actually fixing the defense, because then you set back the clock even further when it comes to the communication and chemistry on this defense. This defense honestly needs time, needs more practices, more than they need a big-time player. So the solution for this defense has to be within. I think that's where they're going to go. If they went and did something like that, that's a panic move, and I don't think that's going to fix anything. The next question comes from Jeremy Pree, who says, are there any viable options for a reliable defensive end to play opposite of Myles Garrett? If so, who could the Browns pick up right now and have an immediate impact? There's nobody right now. It's too late for that. The guy who was available, and the Browns, to their credit, made a good run at him, was Jadeveon Clowney, but for whatever reason, did not want to play in Cleveland. So that did not happen. Jadeveon Clowney would have been an excellent piece next to Myles Garrett, in my opinion. But now there's really nobody there, so you're probably going to have to look at filling that role in the draft. Olivier Vernon seems to be doing the same exact thing he did last year. I would actually want to see more out of this Porter Gustin, because he had a really good camp, and when he was out there, despite the one face mask penalty he had, played pretty well, got some pressure, so I would like to see more out of Porter Gustin, actually. Next question comes from Emmanuel Rosa, who says, would you still trade Odell? If so, what would you like in return? Love the content, by the way. Keep doing good work. No, I'm not trading Odell, because there's nobody you can trade Odell for or get back from Odell that you're going to get a decent value from. I mean, maybe you get a third-round pick for Odell, but if you do that, why? Why? You're trying to win now in these next 3 years. You're not trying to build more, assets. So trading Odell makes no sense. And also, the thing people don't get, if you trade Odell, you lose your deep threat. That's going to affect everything, the run game, the play action, all of that. If Odell's not there, teams don't have to respect the deep threat with Odell, you're in trouble. You know, and Cincinnati found that out the hard way. When they didn't respect the deep threat with Odell, they decided to go one-on-one with William Jackson. Boom, touchdown over top. Next thing you know, a lot of lanes start opening up for Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt because they have to spend so much attention over at Odell. Again, people don't want to go to the tape with Odell. They want to go with the memes, but the tape says you should not trade this dude. That's why every time there's a trade rumor for Odell, it gets shot down almost as fast as it goes up because nobody wants to trade Odell. The next question comes from RTR, who says, do you think the matchup versus Washington is a favorable matchup? Yes, if they do a few things as far as execution. One, the secondary does worry me, but I would hope they would go with the same approach that they did with A.J. Green, where they just let Denzel Ward man up on Terry McLaurin and take care of him and then worry about the rest there. Other than that, I feel like if you can get pressure on this Washington team, you can get to Dwayne Haskins. I don't fear Dwayne Haskins as much as I fear Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, the two other quarterbacks the Browns have played. So I think you're fine there. I don't think he's going to be able to dice you up like those two quarterbacks were able to do, as dangerously as those two quarterbacks were able to do. On the other side of the ball, if the Browns can block this defensive line, I think a lot of things are going to be there for them. I think a lot of things in the run and the pass game will be there for them, but it's all dependent on this offensive line's ability to block. So that's going to be a huge thing for this team. So if they can get those two things in those two areas right, then they'll be fine. But that's it for this week's Q&A. Thank you guys for asking these questions. But again, guys, have a great day. Have a good night.